Democracy. What does it remind you of when you hear the word democracy? Most of you guys probably think that it's a positive word, but that's quite far from the truth. Democracy can be interpreted in many different ways, like how China sees itself as a true democracy because it has full employment, universal education, and the elimination of economic class, which might seem nonsense for UK people as they carry the most successful consolidated democracy. And also, if you think about it, we generally define communist system as anything but democratic. So, what is democracy? Let's break down the word. Democracy is from the Greek word demos, meaning the common people, and kratia, meaning power or rule. So why is it a Greek word? Because it started in ancient Greece and Rome thousands of years ago. Athenian and other Greek democracies are the foundation provided for the concept of public participation. The Roman Empire laid out the concept of republicanism with separation of powers, and Greece gave us the sovereignty. This is how these concepts were built with layers by layers throughout the years. With this in its root, now democratic regimes have important characteristics. First, citizen participation in voting and elections. Second, competition between political parties. Third, liberty with freedom of speech and assembly. And lastly, with rule of law system. In democratic regime, we can exercise the power either directly or indirectly. And as it more developed now, it can be separated to liberal democracy and illiberal democracy. Liberal democracy is basically a political system that promotes participation, competition, and liberty rooted in liberalism. And illiberal democracy would refer to a political system where freedom is restricted with unfair competition. So to complete the definition, democracy is a political power exercised either directly or indirectly by the people through participation, competition, and liberty. And for the regime who exercise the power in this way, we call it democratic regime. Okay, now let's talk about democratization. So how can a country change to democracy and go through democratization? Democratization, the process of becoming more democratic, can happen for different reasons, but it is not that simple. Initially, people thought having a strong middle class would guarantee democracy, but now we know it depends a lot on what powerful leaders decide. Sometimes, even if living standards improve, leaders who control everything might not want to share power, making democratization difficult. Movement by regular people and non-political groups like environmental organizations have played a big role in pushing for democracy. The process is complex, involving factors like better education, leaders sharing power, and people organizing their change. But politics isn't fixed. It keeps changing based on what's happening in the country and world. What leads to democracy today might be different in the future, showing how things are always evolving. Okay, let's talk about institution of democratic states now. As you know, there are three branches: executive, legislature, and judiciaries. Starting off with executive, it's either head of state or head of government. The executive branch executes laws with head of state handling international representation and foreign policy, while the head of government manages daily affairs and domestic policy formulation. For legislature, it can be unicameral or bicameral, and legislatures debate and makes law. In bicameral system, the upper house can modify or reject legislation to prevent hasty decisions, ensuring checks and balances and representing a specific interest. Lastly, for judiciaries, it can either be judicial review and constitutional court. The judiciary in liberal democracies upholds the rule of law and ensures constitutional adherence. Constitutional courts, common in these democracies, review laws for alignment with the Constitution through judicial review. Some countries like the United States have combined courts serving as both final court of appeal and a court of constitutional review. Judicial review takes two forms, which is concrete, responding to specific cases, and abstract, initiated by elected officials without a specific case. And let's briefly talk about models of democracy. Starting off with parliamentary system, this system is where executive and legislative branches are fused together. The Prime Minister and Cabinet come from and are elected by the legislative body, and they can stay as long as they want in power, and they're subjective to the vote of no confidence. and the head of government and the head of state shares the power. For the presidential system, it's less common in democratic regime, but the president is directly elected and has the control over the cabinet and legislature. Unlike parliamentary system, both the president and legislature serve fixed terms. Lastly, let's talk about semi-presidential system. It's a mix of both with directly elected president and a prime minister dependent on legislative confidence. The president influences policy and the prime minister executes it. The system can vary in extent of presidential authority. Okay, now let's move on to electoral systems. Starting off with single-member district, assembly system follow a winner-takes-all system where votes for individual candidates determine the winner and they allow them to take the majority seat. This tends to favor fewer and larger parties, which is a two-party dominance, but however, modification like runoff elections or preferential voting can introduce the adaptability. Next one is proportional representation. PR system involve voting for parties and seats are allocated based on each party's share of the vote. This encourages more smaller parties, ensuring proportional representation. PR relies on multi-member districts, reducing wasted votes and promoting diversity by utilizing party lists. Last one is mixed system, which is combining of PR and SMD system. It allows voters to cast two votes for an individual candidate and a party. This offers a balance between the local focus and the proportionality, providing a flexibility for tailoring to a country's need. However, the system's complexity may pose challenges in understanding, potentially causing confusion among voters. Determining the percentage of seats allocated can be challenging too. Okay, now let's talk about referendum and direct initiative. Countries decide how to make important decisions through referendum and initiative. In the United States and Canada, there are no constitutional rules for national referendum. In contrast, Italy, New Zealand, and Great Britain use this method to let public decide on significant political issues. Government or citizen can start these direct public decisions. Some of people consider that referendum is a democratic high point, while some people also criticize that they're giving too much power to uninformed citizens, making them being easy to get manipulated. Okay, almost lastly, let's talk about civil rights and civil liberties. In countries with liberal democracies, freedom is really important. This includes civil rights, which ensure everyone is treated equally, and civil liberties, like being able to speak freely and have privacy. In global democratic constitutions, there's a focus on either personal rights against the government or rights related to things like education and jobs. Keeping this freedom going needs some key things, which is the government, the culture, and leaders who really care. So making sure these rights are a permanent part of the system is crucial for the democratic regime and people to take a part in democracy. Democracy rooted in history seeks a balance between individual freedom and collective equality, emphasizing participation, competition, and liberty. When institutionalized, democracy upholds the rule of law, preventing anyone from standing above the regime. However, in non-democratic regimes, weak institutionalization or absence of key elements like participation, competition, liberty, and the rule of law leads to power concentration among unaccountable elites. And the next chapter will explore the non-democratic system and it will lead to varying. Thank you for watching and bye-bye.